Hello.
Good afternoon, good evening, or whenever it is you watch this. Good show for you today with and something we haven't done. And you've done it in ways,
Yeah.
and you've put in articles and pictures, funny pictures up and stuff like that, and making a good argument against this reason. But something we haven't done is speak about Vaughan Gething and Welsh politics as much on a live.
No,
so that's
we
what we're going to do now. So everybody who's been asking the question, what's going on with Vaughan Gething, we're going to get a full, in-detailed sort of summary of where we are.
Yeah, and no brown envelopes to be seen.
Yes, absolutely. So let's waste no more time. Let's bring on our guest for this afternoon. Let's bring on Neil Hamilton. Neil, good afternoon.
Hello, how are you? Nice to see you.
Very good to see you. Hope you're doing well.
Yeah, not too bad. Yeah, although I'm missing Wales.
Well, there's nothing much to miss at the moment. It's more mist than miss. The weather's appalling.
Yeah, and also, you're not really missing the leave the M4 at 70 to go straight down to 50 and then crawl through the Newport gauntlet, yes. So you're not missing much. And meanwhile, we're getting worse and worse as a nation, and the corruption seems to be stinking.
Yeah.
But there we go.
Yeah.
Well, Wales has become a banana republic, hasn't it, under Welsh Labour. They've always been in charge in government, and there doesn't seem to be much likelihood that they'll be dislodged even at the next election at the minute. So is it surprising that most people couldn't care less what goes on in the Senedd in Cardiff? They think it's completely irrelevant to their lives. Meanwhile, Welsh Labour gets away with murder, almost literally, and the other opposition parties are useless at opposition. So It's a basket case, I'm afraid.
Yeah, and you'd imagine right now, Welsh politics right now is probably the most embarrassing that I've ever seen it with what's coming out in the public. And you'd imagine it would be open season for the Conservatives, and they would be, and they've been making noises, but have they done as much as they should be doing in this situation as an opposition? Absolutely not.
No. Well, of course, they're fully in bed with a lot of the Labour agenda, aren't they? All the net zero stuff, which is screwing ordinary people through their electricity bills every month, and also through the taxes that are paid to give the subsidies to the wind farm barons, who are mostly foreign vampire companies, and on control of immigration. Neither of them is the slightest interest in controlling immigration. The Tories are spending more nationally in the UK than any government has ever done before. So our taxes are sky high, and tax rates overall are higher than they've been since the Attlee government in the 1940s. So why would you vote Tory if you were against what Labour are doing? Because there's almost no difference between them.
Absolutely right.
No, and the idea of small government and libertarianism seems to just vanish from. It's an anathema to them, Neil.
Yeah.
I remember you at the Conservative Party conference, and you were throwing that ream of paper, weren't you? And saying
Quangos and regulations. I had a huge, great computer printout. In those days, computers were rather different from what they are today, and they used to spew out reams and reams and reams of paper. And I had something which was about 30 foot long, which was all the regulations and quangos that the Conservative government had largely brought in all those years ago. And my aim was to get rid of it all. Yeah.
And of course, now you'd have to have 60 meters of paper, wouldn't you, to look at what's happened, because nobody ever says it's my fault, it's my department, it's my fault, I will fall on my sword. The last person that did that, I believe, was Sir John Knott with the Falklands in 1982, 50 years ago.
Yeah, quite. Indeed. No, I'm afraid that personal responsibility is a thing of the past in politics in Britain, and in Wales in particular, because what's the difference between the Senedd in Cardiff and the Parliament of North Korea in Pyongyang? I mean, Welsh Labour are just as disciplined and in hock to the party bureaucrats in Cardiff as they are in Pyongyang.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, you often refer to Drakeford as King John Drakeford, didn't you? But, you know, I think something that I've been a little bit disappointed with is the lack of spotlight there's been on the Senedd. You know, it's not just that the people, and it is frustrating that the people allow it to happen, because they do, because ultimately by not voting, you are effectively allowing this to happen. So people need to get out and vote. But it's the lack of attention from the media, for example, from Tales Online that we refer to them as, how much they're failing. So you've had Scotland. Scotland is all over the media, you know, all of the time, whereas Wales slips under the radar, and that isn't just a one-off. You know, this seems to be happening throughout politics. You know, whatever the situation may be, Wales seems to get away with it. So it's going to be great to get your view on what is going on at the moment with Vaughan Gething. I suppose it would fall in line nicely that we've got unelected leaders all across, you know, pretty much the United Kingdom, but not -1 now with Humza.
-1.
You know, what's your views on how the Senedd, you know, with the news of Vaughan Gething, his 400,000 loan to 200,000 donation? What's your summarising of it?
Well, you know, the hypocrisy is the first thing that hits you between the eyes, because they will accuse the Tory government at Westminster of all sorts of crimes and misdemeanours as a result of donations that they've been given by corporate bigwigs, and they then get their knighthoods and peerages and so on in exchange. But Labour are just as bad, if not worse, actually, in Wales, because you know, Labour has always been the government since devolution started, and so there's even greater opportunities for corruption in Wales than at the UK level. At least at the UK level, we do get changes of government occasionally, but in Wales, it's just like it used to be behind the old Iron Curtain, you know, before the fall of communism, where nothing ever changes, nobody ever takes any responsibility for anything. You know, Carwyn Jones didn't remember the scandal over Carl Salter committing suicide and all that. Nobody stepped out of line over that, and just same on Vaughan Gething. And it was obviously a scandalously disproportionate amount of money to give to Vaughan Gething for his so-called election campaign to become First Minister. How on earth could he possibly spend £200,000 on an election campaign where there were only 30 odd people who got a vote? I mean, that was nearly £8,000 per vote. And anyway, we know that it's nothing to do with that ultimately. What's happened to the rest of the money, by the way? I wonder where it's sitting now, and what's he going to do with it? It brings the whole of politics into disrepute, this big money coming in from people who've got commercial interests to benefit from, giving it
and convictions, Neil, for
directly opposing the view of the Labour Party. You know, so it's
but the cynic in me, because not only have the Conservatives not opposed, but also on the very day that they had these two debates, one was to have an independent public inquiry, and that was defeated. So Carwyn Jones is going to be the, you know, going to overlook it as if there's not going to be another, you know, he's going to change it and say, no, you're definitely guilty. and of course, the other one was a vote of no confidence in Gething. But both of them were defeated. But what sneaked through, which has not been mentioned in anything, is the approval that we're going to enlarge the Senedd. So we're going to have more pigs in the trough, or snouts in the trough. And they've also changed it. You can declare yourself to be whatever you want to be on the ballot paper to do the diversity quota.
Yeah, indeed.
Unbelievable.
Well, I mean, it is laughable, isn't it, that here we've got a toy town parliament that's only part-time anyway, and so we're going to increase the numbers of members by 50%. What they should have done, of course, is to abolish it, and let's cut the number of politicians and other useless drones who are leeching on the system, because for all the good that the Welsh Parliament has done in the 20-odd years that it's been in existence, who would miss it? Apart from those who are on the gravy train.
Well, Neil, I know for a fact, and you would know, that the rural areas are being punished The farmers are being punished, but also they're merging schools and they're closing the hubs in these villages. The small schools that okay, some years they might only have 15 or 16 or 20 or whatever numbers in there, and somebody looks at a balance sheet and says, oh no, we can merge these schools and put a bus in. The problem is that you're ripping the heart out of these villages, and it's across Wales, and all they ever see is blackmailing psychopaths down in the Senedd who seem to be spending all the money in Newport, Cardiff, Bridgend and Swansea, but the rest of the country can go to hell.
Well, Labour is overwhelmingly urban in the areas that it represents and the attitudes of mind that they've got. And of course, Labour are also overwhelmingly in the UK dependent upon migrant votes as well, or immigrant communities votes. So they aren't really interested in anything outside of their core voting areas and core voting groups. That's why in Mid and West Wales, which I represented for 5 years in the Senedd, which is most of the rural parts of Wales, actually from north to south, the whole of the west coast, from Carnarvonshire down to Pembrokeshire and across to the English border. I saw at first hand how they were deprived by the Cardiff Bay clique, who want to feather the nests of the areas that they represent at the expense of everybody else. And it's that political corruption, because when I was a member of the Senedd, Labour had half the seats, but they only got a third of the votes in the election in which I was elected. So they're hugely overrepresented anyway, and they use that overrepresentation to make these problems even worse.
And of course, it's going to exacerbate the situation when they've got another group, another tranche in there. And looking at the way that it's been stitched up, only Plaid Cymru and Labour will be in the Senedd now. Yeah. It'll be an echo chamber, and that is appalling.
Well, this is the ridiculous thing about the Tories, isn't it? They won't speak out against devolution, and yet they've built themselves into an institution where they can never form the government of the country. They'll always be in opposition. I mean, what intelligent politician wants to live in a world where they can never have the slightest influence upon anything that happens in politics in the country that they're elected to represent? So, I mean, devolution has been a massive disaster, whether in Scotland or in Wales, and somebody ought to be making the argument against devolution. We do in UKIP, of course. We fought the last Senedd elections on getting rid of the Senedd and freeing up all the money that they waste to be used on worthwhile projects. And that's the argument that we need to make in the next election next year as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
What I get, devolution has just caused more enemies, so to say, then, because now it is a point the finger with Labour in Wales and the SNP. It is point the finger, blame other people. So you've naturally got that conflict in the United Kingdom. So, for me, as it is anyway, devolution wouldn't work. It's just an extra layer of government that is, again, just going to cause more problems, spend more money. So it's a no-brainer that it's a failure for me. But people, still, I hark back to people allow it to happen by not getting involved in politics and not even just voting. Just voting along rather than getting involved in politics. But people are the ones that can make a difference here.
Yeah. But it's the sheer power and the sheer weight. The Bridgend Council has more councillors, or the same number of councillors, as New York City. How the hell does that happen? But also, we've now got a situation in Llantwit Major in the Vale of Glamorgan where they were promised single-storey temporary accommodation for Ukrainians, and they hoodwinked the village of Llantwit Major.
Because the village came out to support, because there was protests against it, and the village, a lot of the people, locals, would say, well, no, hang on, if these are Ukrainians, they're genuine, we should be accommodating to them, and rightly so. But now they're so that it's now not single story. They've packed the area that they were going to put them in, and it's now
dinghy hoppers, more or less. That's going to go in there. The rest of the world. It's and they put retrospective planning permission in, and people, the councillors and the councils and the AMs and the Senedd are getting away with this time after time after time after time. And where are the Conservatives? Nowhere to be seen.
Useless, aren't they? Well, Wales is a nation of sanctuary, you know, but the only people who really need sanctuary in Wales are the people of Wales, and somebody needs to defend them against the predations of the Welsh government. And you know, the interests of immigrants are always put ahead of the interests of the Welsh people by the Labour government, whether that's at Westminster or in Cardiff. And until people start waking up to it and stop voting Labour and vote for parties that offer a real alternative, like UKIP, because the Tories don't offer a real alternative at all, then things are going to carry on going from bad to worse. I mean, since devolution was introduced at the end of the last century, Wales has gone backwards relative to the other parts of the UK in terms of standard of living and national income. The education standards are worse in Wales than anywhere else. The health service is worse in Wales than anywhere else. You name it, it's worse in Wales. And even the weather from time to time. But admittedly, that isn't the fault of the Welsh Labour government, but everything else is.
Well, the Tories take credit for the weather when they've had bad weather and the migrants don't come over. They go, see, it's working. You know, nothing to do with the weather. So they take credit for it. So I won't be surprised if they do blame the Tories for a crap weather. So they can say, well, they said it too.
Yeah, they did. And you're quite right, Neil. Every single thing that they've touched, the Labour Party have touched, has had a negative effect on the people of Wales. But how do we get people to turn it around and say enough is enough? Because Reform are mute on all these things.
Yes, the tough topics. You know,
they are mute.
Well, Reform isn't a proper party, is it? Because you can't become a voting member of it. You get no rights if you give them a donation over who's the leader, or you can't get elected to an executive committee which represents the members and decides what the party policy is, because Reform is a £100 company registered at Companies House, and there are 15 shares, 8 of them are owned by Nigel Farage. The party has to have 3 members in order to get registered at the Electoral Commission, and that is in fact all they've got. Nigel Farage, Richard Tice, and somebody with an Indian name who's the party treasurer. They're the only members of Reform. So, you know, they're never going to be a democratic alternative either to the Tories or to Labour. And it's a tragedy, really, that Farage, you know, continues to play at politics, dangling out the prospect, will he, won't he come back into politics? Actually, we know what fish he's frying, and that's Donald Trump in the US, because he wants to have some tidbit from Trump's table after the presidential elections in November. Meanwhile, we've got a general election coming up in the United Kingdom, and you know, he's playing hard to get, whereas we should be campaigning hell for leather to provide a real alternative to the consensus of the Lib Dems, Tories and Labour, because there's very, very little difference between them that's worth talking about.
Well, he wants to be the ambassador, doesn't he, to the United States? That's what Nigel wants.
Yeah, and you know, right, I would say the worst thing that Nigel could do is to step back into politics, I think, for him, because I think he would step back in. I don't think he'd achieve anything really himself, as in would he get elected? Probably not. But as a commentator, he could be doing a lot more. And, you know, if he wants to go back for, but again, with Nigel, it comes down to one thing, you know, Nigel. and that's always the unfortunate case, because, you know, people do tend to follow, but he keeps on bringing it back about him, that he's playing politics with politics. To push himself into the spotlight, and that isn't something that he should be doing. I believe he should be, like you said, banging on about the problems that we're facing.
Yeah, but you're quite right, Neil. Because it's not an undemocratic party, perhaps Reform would perfect for Wales, because because we've got Kim Jun Gething now.
They'd slot right in. Unfortunately, they would easily, and they'd even be weaker than the Tories. We've always called them Tory light or turquoise Tories. You know, they'd slot right in, and they'd be, you know, even softer than the Welsh Conservatives that we've got. But I suppose I do want to ask you about what we're seeing in Ireland very briefly. But before we end that on the Welsh subject, should what should happen with Vaughan Gething? Should there be a public inquiry, and should he resign?
Well, of course, there should be a public inquiry, because why would this waste disposal company want to give a candidate for the First Minister of Wales 200,000 quid for an election campaign in which only 30 people got a vote?
Yeah,
it's the question answers itself, really, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Because clearly they aim to get favours out of it from the permanent government of Wales, and any party which is in office for the length of time that Welsh Labour have been in office, and with no prospect of being defeated in an election in the near future, there's bound to be an institutionalized corruption that creeps into the system. And it's obvious that 200,000 quid is grossly disproportionate in its size. And Lee Waters and Alan Davis have made this point from within Welsh Labour. Neither of them, of course, did anything other than form up with the rest of the tribe yesterday and vote with them. So they'll never actually do anything, whatever mutterings there might be off stage. So inevitably in these circumstances, as I believe £45,000 is the maximum donation that anybody's allowed to make for an election campaign in Welsh Labour, and yet this is nearly 5 times that limit, and apparently there's nothing wrong with that. As you rightly say, an investigation by Carwyn Jones into this is going to be no investigation at all. He'll be covering Vaughan Gething with whitewash at the end of it, won't he?
Yes.
He will.
You should. I can see the headline. I can see the headline now, because obviously Vaughan Gething marketed himself as the first black leader in Europe or whatever. So first black leader in Europe, whitewashed. Brilliant. That's the article that's going to come out in the future from Voice of Wales, definitely.
Yeah, definitely.
But
I just need to also say, Rowan Williams, the Welsh equivalent of Jeremy Corbyn, he was put in charge, or part in charge of the reforms for the Senedd. Any surprise that he's come out with with a larger Senedd and all this? And he was supposed to be independent.
Yeah, exactly. Well, if he does for Welsh Labour what he did for the Church of England, then I think there's everything to hope for, isn't there? Because when you look at the performance of the bishops and archbishops, I call the current archbishop the archbedwetter of Canterbury.
Yes,
and that's all they are. At least Rowan Williams was a noted and respected theologian, but why Welsh Labour need a theologian to design an election system, I don't know. Presumably because it's beyond the capacity of human beings to reason, and there you have to rely on God to tell you why they're doing it.
Yes.
Excellent. So I'd love to get your quick opinion there on what we're seeing in Ireland, because this may sound harsh and people will probably criticize me for what I'm saying, but I'm finding this fantastic because, what they have tried to force and keep off the table as much as they can, it is forced, they can't be avoided now, because we're talking, we're talking hard border again, this time from the other side. But what's your views on this whole situation?
Well, in the immortal words of Corporal Jones, they don't like it up 'em, do they?
It's the irony, isn't it? That Lord Frost said, well, we don't want to build a border. If you want to go build a border, go ahead. And that's how it should have been left for. But obviously the meddling WEF Johnson came in and said, no, we'll have it in the Irish Sea, which infuriated anyone who actually is a unionist, which I am, and I know that you are, Neil. So yes, good on them. And the irony is, it'll be Sinn Féin that does it. Yeah.
Well, we should have called the EU's bluff over the border 5-6 years ago when this was being discussed. And I always said, you build a wall if you want one. But, we won't object. But otherwise, we shan't be building one ourselves. But now, of course, they see the advantage of having a border Now they don't like free movement coming from the UK. Free movement from Ireland into the UK, of course, is all to the good as far as the Irish are concerned, but they don't want them when we're decanting all the refuse arriving on the Kent coast over into the Irish Republic. I think that we should meet all the people arriving on the southern coast of England and welcome them aboard, give them their one-way ticket to Dublin, and actually take them to Newry and say that off you go.
I would. So this is my view. They get on a coach at Dover. They go right down the M4 onto an Irish ferry, and we wave them goodbye.
Well, this is exactly what Texas and Florida have done, of course, in the United States. They send all the immigrants flooding across the Mexican border, the Rio Grande, up to New York, to Detroit, and the other Democrat cities, where they've all been mouthing off about their obligations, the US's obligations to hundreds of millions of people around the world fleeing persecution and so on. Well, let the people who believe in a nation of sanctuary give them sanctuary themselves. This is what I said when we had the controversy over the migrant camp at Penally in Pembrokeshire. Do you remember that? I blamed it all on Wales being a nation of sanctuary, and I said no, we should dump them all on the doorsteps of the Senedd in Cardiff.
No, and actually reveal publicly Drakeford's allotment. Get them camping on that. See what he'd say.
Well, he's got a garden shed, doesn't he? So we can use that.
And it's a pretty big garden shed from what I hear as well, isn't it? It's 2 stories. I think it's quite unbelievable. But again, it's more of the Welsh. But it's interesting to see because there's going to be an outcome from this with Ireland, and it's going to I don't know what it's going to end up like, because if they say, well, we're putting them back in Britain, well, we've got the license then to say, well, we're putting them back in France. So I don't know. How would you think this is going to pan out? What's going to happen?
Well, I think what's happening, of course, is the EU is disintegrating. The European Parliament election this year, and the parties that take the same kind of view as we do of the EU are going to have a massive success. It's almost worth being members of the EU again in order to participate in this, but not quite. But I was talking to Herman Kelly yesterday, who is the leader of the Irexit party that wants to get Ireland out of the EU. Because Herman was the UKIP press officer in Brussels when we had MEPs. So there are all parties like the Irexit party all over Europe are going to see massive increases in their support levels this year, and that's going to produce a political crisis, I think, for the EU.
And it would be perfect. I agree with what Greece is doing at the moment and have camps, and they go in there, they get processed, and then they get sodded off 6 months later. And that's what needs to happen. And with Ireland, I think that once we start playing this ping pong, and I don't, unfortunately, I don't believe that Rishi Sunak has got the balls to actually stand up to them.
No. But they've got no right to enter the United Kingdom. So if the Irish government are thinking that they can give them plane tickets to arrive or boat tickets to arrive on our shores, they're very much mistaken, because we don't have to allow them off the plane or the boat.
No, exactly. But like I say, it takes balls to do it, doesn't it?
And even if we do let them off the boat, we can have the coaches waiting to take them up to Stranraer or to Holyhead and put them on the boat back again, so we can go around in circles.
It'd certainly be cheaper than putting them in hotels.
Exactly.
So it's an investment worthwhile there. But I think that, lastly, it'd be wrong not to talk about the UKIP leadership contest. But obviously before that, you've obviously been at the helm now for quite some time. So can we get maybe some highs and lows of your leadership career?
Well, it's been a very depressing time in British politics, hasn't it? We've seen the migrant crisis developing and nothing's been done about it. We've seen the economy wrecked. We've seen a massive increase in government control of people's lives through COVID and other things. We've seen the woke agenda going completely berserk everywhere. And none of the major parties has got any answers to any of these problems, but UKIP does. And it's very depressing that we've not been able to strike a chord with the British people in the way that we did whilst we were still in the EU on a single issue to grab their attention. But I've been, even at my advanced age, proud to be the leader of UKIP, to do my bit. I've never seen this as something which my personal ambition required. I could have stood many times for the leadership of UKIP before, because I've been a member of UKIP since 2002. So I've never had the ambition to lead the party, but I stepped in as an act of duty because we had a succession of people who were not up to it, one after another, and somebody had to do something to steady the ship. So at least I've steadied the ship, and I hope from here we'll be able to make progress again. The general election is an opportunity to do this, but I'm afraid that Nigel Farage and Reform UK have made it very difficult to create a viable alternative like UKIP used to be to the Lib Lab Con consensus. And so my aim has been to keep UKIP in being, to keep it alive and kicking where we can, but that depends upon getting members on the ground and local branches to represent the things that we believe in and to advocate them. So my high points, in a way, have been also low points for the country, such as when I came to Stradey in Llanelli to support local people protesting against filling up Stradey Park Hotel with undeserving migrants. So that's what I've really enjoyed doing most, is being down there with the people all over the country from time to time in different places on the issues which matter most to people in their personal lives. And that's for me what politics is all about, what it's always been about. I've wanted to get government off the people's backs and put more of their own money back into their own pockets to defend the realm, both from without and from within. And no party has done that since Thatcher, in my view. So we need to rekindle that flame. I'm getting a bit long in the tooth for it now, but I'll keep going as long as I can.
Yes, yeah.
No, I'm looking forward to when you pass the baton, you and Godders coming into Wales and having a pint and rating in pubs, and I'll be there.
And that's something that we can certainly say for yourself, is that you've been a leader that has always got amongst the people. It was a clear, I wish we'd snapped the pictures at the time, but it was when you came to the Stradey and you were sitting down with the people having a cup of tea, chatting to the ladies. And then when Richard Tice came down, he was standing on the rock preaching to them as if he was the Messiah. So there was an absolute clear cut, distinguished there. But you've most certainly been, in with the people as far as I've been, we've been working with doing this, isn't it? But then also we've met Lois and we've met Bill. We've had them on the show as well. Both really fantastic candidates. So it'd be good, I walked away from the last, or after we've spoken to them both, isn't it? Because I wasn't 100% sure. Obviously, I didn't know much about Lois, didn't know much about Bill. But then after speaking to them both, I was confident that I'm happy that the party is going to be left in capable hands, whoever wins. But, what would your comments be on the leadership?
Well, I know Lois and Bill very well, because I've known Bill for 15 years or more. And, I helped him in his campaign to become a member of the European Parliament before 2014. So I've worked with Bill for a long time. I haven't known Lois as long as that, but I've worked with her on her anti-net zero campaign. And they're both very, very good candidates. And I've deliberately kept out of this contest because I didn't want to influence the outcome by saying who I was going to vote for. I'd be happy with either of them, same as you. And I hope they'll both come together after the election and fight as a united team for UKIP. And I'll do my best to help both of them in that respect. I've said to both of them that after the election, I'm not going away. I'm going to remain an active member of UKIP. I'm going to carry on campaigning on the things that mean the most to me. And ultimately, it's Britain I care about, and that's what I'll be campaigning for.
Brilliant, Neil. Brilliant.
Well, I'm certainly looking forward to bringing you down to Wales again with Godfrey, and we could have a few beers and set the worlds to right in the pub.
Just and Harvey, actually.
And Harvey,
we've not forgot that.
Well,
trio.
I'm up for that. Campaigning in pubs is what I do best.
Excellent. Well, you've got a campaign coming soon, haven't you?
Oh, yes.
Brilliant stuff. Well, Neil, it's always a pleasure having you on the show with us. Thank you very much again for joining us. And again, I'm really excited to see what the future holds for UKIP. I think there's never been a time, apart from the EU, that this party is needed more than there is now.
No, absolutely right. It is, and of course, reform. It'll blow away. It's not here after the election, and that's how they've always operated.
Yeah.
So, but UKIP have always been around, and we're always fighting for freedom and our corner.
Yes.
But yes, it's been brilliant, Neil, and pass on our regards to Christine.
I'll do that. Thank you very much.
Excellent.
See you again soon.
Cheers.
Thanks, Neil. Bye.
Excellent.
Yeah.
I wish we had more Neil Hamiltons in the Senedd. The Wales would be a completely different blinking place if we had more Neil Hamiltons in the Senedd. But everything, and this is the point, is that if you pop your head up, all you need to do is look. Stan's announced he's the prospective parliamentary candidate, and he's having articles done weekly on him.
Yeah.
So you're not just going in and trying to take on the people who might disagree with you and have a nice debate with them. You're going up against a real nasty machine.
Yeah.
And the disruptors, the Neil Hamiltons in the Senedd, is what's needed and what will bring change. And it is only UKIP that give people the license to do that.
Well, I mean,
all you need to do is look at reform on why they're deselecting candidates.
Yeah.
The maddest one that I heard was the witch. She was selling spells on eBay, and you can't be doing that. Off you go.
Yeah.
Is it what were they going to do? They might annoy her and they start voodooing. She should voodoo them or something. I don't know. But there needs to be an agitator in every single town and city. Someone who is going to stand up and say, "I'm not dealing with this anymore."
But also somebody who can reach across the benches. And what Neil did at the Senedd on probably about the 2 or 3 days he was in there, he actually got everybody else to unite against Labour, and they were picking another candidate to stand.
We're going to put on mute so someone can clear their throat. There we are. We got someone choking in the corner. So obviously we can only let him suffer so long, and then becomes abuse.
Yeah, but he's only pretending to choke.
Yeah, Stan's disappointed. So ultimately, what I think we need to all focus on is, we, Voice of Wales, need to be spending more time talking about Wales. And every time we come into the studio now, we'll be doing an update on Welsh politics. So that's something that's going to be coming up regular. And we're going to swat up on it,
I don't need to.
That's the noise in Stan's head. Literally came out loud then. So, yeah. But, that's what part of what we want to bring. The website is back up now as well. There's been lots of people asking about the website. And because what we did is we announced that there was going to be, my fault, I'll be honest. We announced that there was going to be extra content coming as a section going to be built onto the website for members. So if you are a subscriber, you are going to be able to log into your own little section, and you're going to be in a members only section where you can watch members only lives. You can have members only, what they call forums and stuff like that. And we can do lots of different things. I'm thinking the book club, right, is a bit difficult. I always do this. I go off on one when I want to try and make a bit so I can clip. But anyway, the book
Are you
club.
going to put the subscribe in the...
Yes, I'm going to show it now. I've gone off track a little bit. I'm going the long way. So the book club is a bit difficult because I'm thinking like how we've got to stay inside copyright laws and stuff like that. And it would mean that everybody would have to buy the book. So obviously you're paying for a subscription. So, asking to buy a book every month as well is a bit of a pain. So what I think we might do is sort of book reviews. And the book reviews would be with someone, let's just say, who has read the book and done, sort of bits on the book, and have them on, or potentially even written the book. Have them on and speak them and do a book review, and then obviously that'll promote the good book to you all. But
there's only one good book.
Well, I don't know. I like Animal Farm as well. Yeah. But to do that, obviously, we've got this section here. So subscribe to Voice of Wales. You can do it £3, £5, £10. We have been asked if we can add a custom button, but I don't know how to do that yet. So we'll try and figure that out. But that is then everybody will have the same access to content. Ultimately, the £3, £5, £10 just goes towards supporting the work that we do. But for your subscription, we are going to try and give back, as much extra as we can to make that viable and worthwhile for you, partnering with your good money, but it does all go on a good cause because we put a post out. Well, it does go on a good cause because he's fronted the bill. So yeah, don't worry about it. Don't worry about subscribing. No, we've got obviously the website, which is just up again now, which is working. That's just gone out. We've had the streaming software, so us able to bring this to you live. That's just gone out. That was like 500 quid. So, you know, it all mounts up and it does all help. So anybody that does support us and can support us, we really appreciate it. Go on, add your bit.
That's it.
That's it. Is nod.
Just a nod.
Just a nod. Cool. So, anything else?
And if it was a Gething, it would be a nod and a wink, wouldn't it?
And a backhander.
And a
Job done?